Ladies and gentlemen, I want to start with a confession. I used to believe that talking about money, especially wanting more of it, was shameful. I thought ambition made you greedy, and dreaming of wealth meant you were superficial. Can anyone here relate? But here's the untold truth. Money isn't just paper or numbers, it's energy, possibility, and freedom. And the first myth we have to shatter is this. Being rich is about having more, while being broke is about not having enough. It's not. Being broke is often a mindset before it's a bank balance. It's the voice that says, I'm not smart enough, or I'm too late, or people like me don't get rich. Let's rewrite that story tonight. When I was a kid, I remember standing in the checkout line at the grocery store with my mom. She'd shuffle through her wallet, counting every dollar, holding her breath as the cashier rang up each item. And I remember watching the people in line behind us, the ones who didn't seem worried. They'd toss magazines and candy bars onto the conveyor belt without a second thought. I didn't know it then, but I was already learning something about money. I was learning that money wasn't just about what you had in your wallet. It was about how much power and freedom you felt when you reached into it. And maybe you felt that too, the tightness in your chest when a bill comes due, or the shame of avoiding calls because you know it's a collector. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you felt the quiet thrill of paying for dinner without checking your bank balance first. Whatever your experience, the truth is this: money isn't just currency, it's a story we tell ourselves. And for too many of us, that story is rooted in fear, scarcity, and shame. We inherit these stories from the world around us: parents who struggled, communities that judged, cultures that equated poverty with virtue and wealth with corruption. And we carry these stories, sometimes without even realizing it. I carried mine for years. I told myself that wanting more was selfish, that dreaming bigger was dangerous, and that financial security was something other people got to have, not me. But one day, I had a conversation that changed everything. A friend and I were talking about money, and I found myself saying, I just want to make enough to feel safe. And she looked me dead in the eye and said, enough to feel safe, or enough to feel free. I didn't know how to answer. Because the truth was, I'd been playing small not just with money, but with my life. I'd been letting fear, not possibility, decide what I thought I deserved. And maybe you have too. Maybe you've told yourself that being rich is for other people, that success is something you don't deserve, or that dreaming bigger is selfish when so many people are struggling. But what if we flip the script? What if wanting more didn't mean being greedy, it meant being responsible? Because here's the truth: when you're broke, your world gets smaller. You spend your energy worrying about bills, not dreaming about opportunities. You make decisions out of fear, not freedom. But when you have wealth, real wealth, you don't just change your own life. You change the lives of the people around you. Money isn't the enemy of generosity, it's the fuel for it. It's the tool that lets you invest in your family, your community, and your vision for the world. And that's why we have to start talking about it not as something shameful or superficial, but as something powerful. Because money doesn't make you greedy, it makes you capable. Capable of taking care of the people you love. Capable of showing up in the moments that matter. Capable of creating a life that isn't just about surviving, but thriving. And that starts here. It starts now. It starts with the courage to look at your own money story and ask, is this the story I want to keep telling? Or is it time to write a new one? Now, let's talk about courage, because making money isn't about playing it safe. When I started my first business, I was terrified. I felt like an imposter. Every time I hit send on an email pitch or asked for the sale, my palms would sweat. I rehearsed conversations in my head 100 times before making a single phone call. And even then, I second-guessed myself after hanging up. I kept thinking, what if they say no? What if I sound desperate? What if they figure out I have no idea what I'm doing? The fear felt real, and it was loud, but so was the dream. Courage isn't about waiting until the fear is gone, it's about moving forward in spite of it. It's about deciding that the vision you have for your life is more important than the voice in your head telling you to shrink. I remember the first time I charged someone for my work. I spent days agonizing over what to say and what number to write on the invoice. I almost undercharged because honestly, part of me didn't believe I deserved to be paid at all. But then I thought about the hours I had poured into learning my craft, the late nights I had spent building something from nothing, and the sacrifices I had made along the way. And I thought, if I don't value what I bring to the table, why should anyone else? That moment wasn't comfortable, but it was transformative. Because the minute I stopped apologizing for asking to be paid, I realized that wealth doesn't start with a paycheck, it starts with permission. Permission to step out of the shadows and be seen. Permission to charge what you're worth. Permission to fail, to learn, and to grow anyway. And here's the thing, comfort zones aren't built to keep us safe, they're built to keep us small. They whisper lies like stay here and nothing can hurt you. But what they don't tell you is that staying small hurts too. It hurts every time you say no to an opportunity because you're afraid you'll mess it up. It hurts every time you watch someone else take a leap and wonder why you can't do the same. And it hurts every time you trade your dreams for excuses because you're more committed to avoiding failure than chasing success. When I look back on the most pivotal moments of my life, the ones that changed everything, none of them felt safe when they happened. They felt terrifying, I felt unprepared, I felt exposed, but I also felt alive. Because courage isn't a guarantee that you'll win, it's a promise that you'll try. And trying is what separates the dreamers from the doers, the thinkers from the achievers, and the people who wish for wealth from the ones who actually build it. The truth is, getting rich, really rich, isn't about talent, timing, or luck. It's about being willing to put yourself in the arena again and again, even when the odds are stacked against you. It's about showing up messy, imperfect, and unsure and staying in the game long enough to figure it out. I think we all have moments in our lives where we're standing at the edge of something bigger than we've ever experienced before, and the temptation to step back, to retreat to what's familiar can feel overwhelming. But if you step back, you never find out what's waiting on the other side. I've learned that wealth isn't built in the moments when we feel ready. It's built in the moments when we feel anything but ready and choose to move forward anyway. I've also learned that courage doesn't mean doing it all alone. It means building connections, asking for help, and learning from people who've been where you're trying to go. I used to think asking for help made me weak, but what I realized is that courage isn't about having all the answers, it's about being brave enough to admit when you don't and bold enough to go looking for them. And maybe the scariest part of stepping outside your comfort zone isn't failing, it's succeeding. Because success means you have to keep showing up. You have to keep stretching, growing, and risking the possibility that you'll lose what you've built. But here's what I know, it's worth it. Every scary email, every awkward phone call, every rejection, every sleepless night spent wondering if you're doing the right thing. Because wealth isn't built in a single moment, it's built in the small, daily acts of courage that most people are too afraid to take. And the question I want to leave you with is this. What's the risk you're willing to take today that your future self will thank you for tomorrow? Let's talk about mindset, because the rich don't just think differently, they see differently. They see problems as puzzles to solve, not walls to avoid. They see money as a seed, not a safety net. They see failure as feedback, not a finish line. And perhaps most importantly, they see wealth as something to be created, not something to be inherited or stumbled upon. I'll never forget a conversation I had with a mentor early in my career. I told her I wanted financial freedom. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "Then stop thinking like an employee and start thinking like an owner." At first, I didn't fully understand what she meant. I thought, what's wrong with thinking like an employee? I work hard, I follow the rules, and I show up every day. But over time, it hit me. Employees focus on security. They look for paychecks, benefits, and stability. Owners focus on growth. They look for opportunities, leverage, and impact. Employees think about what they can earn. Owners think about what they can build. That shift in perspective changed everything for me. It made me realize how much of my life had been shaped by scarcity, thinking the belief that resources are limited, success is a zero-sum game, and there's never enough to go around. It's the kind of thinking that keeps you stuck because it makes you afraid to take risks. It keeps you hoarding what you have instead of investing it. It keeps you competing instead of collaborating, surviving instead of thriving. But the people who build wealth quickly, the ones who don't just get by but get ahead, don't operate from scarcity. They operate from abundance. They don't look at money as something to protect. They look at it as something to grow. They don't ask, can I afford this? They ask, how can I create this? And that's the difference. I had a friend who wanted to start a business but kept talking herself out of it. She'd say things like, I don't have the money to invest, or I don't have the time to make it work, or I'm not ready yet. One day I asked her, what would you do if you believed success was guaranteed? She looked at me like I was crazy, but it's not. She said, and I told her, that's exactly the point. Wealth doesn't come from guarantees. It comes from acting like success is possible before you have proof. Because here's the truth, the rich aren't afraid to bet on themselves. They understand that every investment, whether it's time, money, or energy, is a seed. And seeds don't grow unless you plant them. I had to learn that lesson the hard way. I spent years being afraid to spend money, afraid to invest in education, coaching, or tools that could make me better. I talked myself out of it, saying, I'll do it later, or I'll wait until I have more saved up. But what I didn't realize was that waiting wasn't saving me money, it was costing me time. And time is the one thing you can't get back. The people who build wealth fast don't wait for perfect conditions. They create momentum with what they have and trust that growth will follow. And this isn't just about money, it's about habits. Wealthy people aren't just focused on what they're doing. They're focused on how they're thinking. They don't let fear dictate their decisions. They don't see failure as a reason to quit, they see it as data to improve. They don't play defense with their finances, they play offense. One of the biggest shifts I made was learning to ask better questions. Instead of asking, how can I save more money? I started asking, how can I make more money? Instead of asking, what if this doesn't work? I started asking, what if it does? And here's the thing, wealth doesn't show up overnight. It's built over time through small, consistent actions. But those actions don't start with your bank account. They start with your mindset. I used to believe that rich people were just lucky that they were born into wealth or stumbled upon the right idea at the right time. But what I've learned is that luck isn't random. It's built, it's earned, and it's attracted by the way you think, the way you work, and the way you show up for opportunities. I've also learned that abundance isn't just about believing there's enough for you. It's about knowing there's enough for everyone. Because when you truly adopt an abundant mindset, you stop seeing other people as competition. You stop resenting their success and start learning from it. You stop holding back and start sharing what you know, because you realize that giving value doesn't cost you anything, it multiplies your impact. That's what wealthy people do. They don't just focus on taking, they focus on giving. They build networks, they create partnerships, they add value to every room they walk into. And that's why opportunities seem to follow them wherever they go. But none of this happens without intention. You can't think your way to wealth, you have to act your way there. And those actions have to start before you feel ready, before you feel worthy, and before you feel certain that it's going to work. Because the truth is, certainty is a luxury you can't afford if you want to get rich faster. You have to learn to bet on yourself when no one else will. You have to believe in possibilities that other people can't see yet. And you have to be willing to step into the unknown, not because you know exactly what's going to happen, but because you trust yourself to figure it out along the way. And that's the mindset shift that changes everything. It's the difference between waiting for success and creating it. It's the difference between surviving and thriving. It's the difference between staying small and building a legacy that outlives you. And it all starts with one question. What if the life you want is already possible, but you're the one holding the keys? Here's the truth, no one tells you about getting rich. You're gonna fail, Dot. Not once, not twice, but probably dozens of times. And that's okay. Failure is the price of growth. It's the tuition we pay for lessons that can't be learned in books. And here's the thing, failure isn't final. It doesn't define you unless you let it. But too often we see failure as something to be avoided at all costs, something that means we're not good enough or that we're on the wrong path. I'll tell you this, failure is inevitable. Whether you're starting a business, launching a product, or just trying to build a new habit, there will be moments when things don't go as planned. You'll make mistakes. You'll miss opportunities. You'll experience setbacks that will make you question whether you should just throw in the towel and go back to what you were doing before. But the difference between those who get rich and those who don't isn't in how many times they fail, it's in how they respond. When I first started my entrepreneurial journey, I failed multiple times. I launched a product that flopped. I hired people who weren't a good fit for the team. I made decisions that cost me both money and time. Each failure was painful, but it wasn't until I stopped being afraid of failure that I started to see it for what it really was, an opportunity to learn. I remember one moment vividly after one of my products didn't take off. I sat down with my mentor and I was so ready to tell her I was done. I had put everything I had into that launch, time, money, energy, and when it didn't work, I felt like I had failed not just myself, but everyone who believed in me. But she looked at me and said, "You haven't failed, you've just gotten feedback." At first, I didn't know what she meant. Feedback that didn't feel like feedback, it felt like a big, embarrassing, costly failure. But as she explained, I realized something important. Failure wasn't a wall, it was a doorway. Every time something didn't work, I had a chance to pivot, to try something new, to refine my approach and get closer to what would actually work. I began to understand that the more I failed, the more I learned. The more I stumbled, the more I was actually getting closer to success. It wasn't about avoiding failure, it was about learning to fail better, faster, and more effectively. And here's the kicker: the more you fail, the more you realize that the people who succeed don't succeed by avoiding failure. They succeed by failing forward. Let's think about that for a moment. Failing forward means taking the lessons from your mistakes and using them to move ahead. It means that every time you fall, you don't stay down, you use that moment to get up stronger, wiser, and more determined. I met a successful entrepreneur once who told me, I don't see failure as a step back. I see it as a step forward in a different direction. He explained that every mistake he made was an opportunity to learn about what doesn't work. And that to him was just as valuable as knowing what does. The truth is, failing forward is what separates the wealthy from everyone else. Because when you fail forward, you get used to failing. You get comfortable with the discomfort of being wrong, of being misunderstood, of being the one who doesn't have all the answers. And you keep going anyway. And it's not just about big life-changing failures. The small failures matter too. It's the rejection emails, the missed deadlines, the moments where you feel like you've given it your all and still come up short. Those failures are just as important because they build your resilience. They teach you how to bounce back when the world feels heavy and your confidence is shaken. I remember a time when I had to make a decision about whether to invest in a new business opportunity. I wasn't sure if it was the right move, but I went ahead anyway. The deal didn't pan out. In fact, I ended up losing a significant amount of money. But instead of being devastated, I started asking myself, what can I learn from this? What do I need to change in my approach next time? By shifting my perspective from failure to feedback, I was able to make the next opportunity even better. The lessons I learned became the foundation of future success. And eventually, those lessons compounded into something far more valuable than money: confidence in my ability to take risks and trust myself to navigate uncertainty. Let me tell you, that's one of the most important things you'll ever learn on the road to wealth. Confidence doesn't come from always getting it right. It comes from knowing that no matter how many times you get it wrong, you can still figure it out. When we start to embrace failure, we begin to see it not as a setback, but as a stepping stone. When we fail forward, we're not just learning from our mistakes, we're building the resilience we need to keep pushing past them. And resilience, my friends, is one of the most powerful things you can cultivate if you want to get rich faster. The truth is, it's the ones who keep going after they fail who eventually break through. They don't give up, they don't walk away, they get up, they adjust, and they try again. And the beauty of that is that every time they fail, they're one step closer to success. So the next time you fail, don't think of it as the end. Think of it as the beginning of a new chapter. Think of it as your launch pad, your tuition fee, your stepping stone to greatness. Because without failure, there is no growth. And without growth, there is no wealth. Now, let's talk about the power of relationships, because believe me, you can't get rich alone. We live in a world where we're taught to hustle, to grind, to do it all ourselves. We wear our independence like a badge of honor. But I've learned that the wealthiest people are rarely self-made. They are relationship-made. They are people who've understood the value of connection, collaboration, and leveraging the knowledge and resources of others to accelerate their own success. I remember a time when I thought I could do everything by myself. I believed that if I just worked hard enough, kept my head down, and didn't ask for help, success would come. I spent hours pouring my heart into my work, but it felt like I was moving in circles, spinning my wheels. I was missing something, but I couldn't put my finger on it. It wasn't until I reached out to a friend, someone who had been through similar struggles, that I started to see the power of community. She looked at me and said, "You're trying to do everything alone. Why are you not asking for help? Why aren't you connecting with people who can show you a different way?" That moment shifted something in me. I had been avoiding collaboration because I thought it meant I wasn't capable enough. I thought needing help was a weakness, and that if I couldn't do it all on my own, I wasn't worthy of success. But she showed me that asking for help wasn't a sign of inadequacy, it was a sign of strength. It was a way to expand your capacity, to learn faster, to tap into resources you didn't even know were available to you. That's when I began to build relationships with people who could teach me things I didn't know. And when I say teach me things I didn't know, I mean everything from practical business skills to mental frameworks that completely transformed the way I viewed success. I started attending networking events, reaching out to mentors, joining mastermind groups, and opening myself up to feedback. And in return, I started offering my own support and value to others, whether that was by sharing my expertise, offering introductions, or simply being a sounding board for someone else's ideas. The more I gave, the more I received. What I learned was this: wealth isn't just about what you know, it's about who you know, and more importantly, who knows you. It's about being a part of a network that is willing to lift you up, to introduce you to new opportunities, to give you the encouragement to keep going when things get tough. And in turn, it's about being that person for others. It's about being generous with your time, your knowledge, and your resources. You see, the people who get rich faster are the ones who understand the value of collaboration. They are not threatened by other people's success, they celebrate it. They don't compete with their network, they elevate it. They know that their success is intertwined with the success of the people around them. When you help others succeed, you create a ripple effect that eventually comes back to you, sometimes in ways you never expected. Take, for example, the story of a successful entrepreneur who built her empire not by going at it alone, but by surrounding herself with a community of like-minded individuals. She didn't just rely on her own abilities, she partnered with others who brought complementary skills to the table. She formed strategic alliances, collaborated with influencers, and leveraged the collective wisdom of her network to grow faster than she ever could have on her own. And in doing so, she created something bigger than herself, something that wouldn't have been possible if she had tried to do it all alone. The thing is, success doesn't happen in a vacuum. We don't achieve great things in isolation. We achieve them in community. And the more you invest in relationships, the more you'll see the dividends of those investments pay off in ways you can't predict. So how do you start building these relationships? Start by giving first. Start by being genuinely curious about other people's goals, challenges, and dreams. Ask questions, listen, offer help without expecting anything in return. The more you give, the more you'll receive, not just in terms of tangible resources, but in terms of the intangible things that matter most: trust, loyalty, respect, and genuine connection. But also, don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there and say, I don't have all the answers and I can't do this on my own. The right people will respect that honesty. They will be drawn to your vulnerability, your willingness to learn, and your openness to collaboration. They'll want to help you succeed because they'll see that you are invested in their success too. I learned that lesson the hard way. For years, I hesitated to reach out to people I admired, convinced that they were too busy or too important to help someone like me. But when I finally got the courage to send that email, to make that phone call, to ask for that meeting, I was amazed by the responses. People were not only willing to help, they were excited to help. They wanted to see me succeed because they believed in the power of relationships, just like I do now. You know, the more I think about it, the more I realize that every relationship you build is an investment. And like any good investment, the returns come over time. Sometimes it takes months or even years for the connections you make to bear fruit. But if you stay committed, if you continue to nurture those relationships, they'll pay you back in ways you can't imagine. The truth is, relationships are the bedrock of wealth. They are the cornerstone of every business, every opportunity, every success story. And the beauty of that is, relationships are available to everyone. You don't need a trust fund or a lucky break. You just need to show up, be present, and be willing to invest in others. When you do that, you open the door to endless opportunities, ideas, and resources that can help you build the wealth you've always dreamed of. So my challenge to you today is simple. Start building your network, start giving, start connecting, and start asking for help. Because the truth is, you don't have to do it alone. And when you stop trying to, you'll find that you get rich faster than you ever thought possible. As we wrap up today, I want to leave you with this. Building wealth is not about chasing after money. It's about chasing after your potential. It's about having the courage to step into the unknown, to fail forward, to change your mindset, and to embrace the power of relationships. We often get stuck in the belief that we need to follow a certain path, take the same steps as everyone else, and play it safe. But the truth is, the richest people in the world didn't get there by playing it safe. They got there by daring to do things differently, by betting on themselves, by failing, and by rising, and by surrounding themselves with others who believed in them, who shared their vision, and who helped them build something greater than themselves. So, as you leave here today, I challenge you to think bigger, to act bolder, and to start building the wealth that is already waiting for you. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't wait for everything to fall into place. The time is now, and you have everything you need to succeed within you. Remember, the path to wealth doesn't happen by accident. It happens when you choose to act, when you choose to grow, when you choose to invest in yourself, in others, and in your future. Take that first step and then take another. Keep going even when it gets hard. And trust that every lesson, every failure, and every relationship you build will lead you to where you're meant to be. The road to riches isn't a straight line, it's a journey. And the journey starts now.